Congratulations for making it this far. We're now going to talk about actually a little bit more hands-on activity. Apologies, I didn't realize the system had wanted a change in the password, so I executed said change to that password. It's no longer understanding. I put it in the chat. It's capital U understanding with an 1 and an underbar 1, 2 at the end. Anyway, look at the chat for the new password and log in anytime during this session to kind of catch up. We're now going to talk about what's on screen here. So, at first it can seem a little daunting, to build a successful web map and application. All of these things are considered. What's the source of the data? Do I trust it? Is it any good? Do other people trust it? Little data prep, often we call it data hygiene. Got to have clean data, or at least understand where it needs a little help. We're going to map it. We're going to create pop-ups off of it. We're going to symbolize the data, hopefully in a meaningful way. And then in Diana's section, in particular, we'll show how to then inject that map into other applications. And I think I mentioned how the New York Times and other organizations, they hand you this finished product, and it's a beautiful map, helps narrate a story. One of the ways we're a little different in the GIS community is we also can hand you the layer and the web map and 8 other versions of web maps, all revealing different aspects of the data. And that's what's very exciting for us. But it all comes down to, what am I trying to convey? And I would offer to you, if you're one of those people who expects to have an answer to that question at the start of every project, and you expect your answer at the end of that project to be identical to what you thought at the start, you're a rare person, or you're in a rare situation, or both. Usually what I'm trying to convey at the start will evolve over time, and that's okay. That's part of the process. So I'm going to do something with you all. I've always wanted to do this. This is the first time I'm kind of debuting it. And it's we're calling it Deconstructing a Map. So we're going to take this perfectly good map that you had seen previously in section 1 on global particulate matter. And we're going to kind of break it down. There's a radio podcast called, I don't know the name of it, but basically it's Deconstructing Led Zeppelin, or Deconstructing this song. And they take the songs that we know, like Stairway to Heaven, and they break it down track by track and reveal things that you didn't know about the song when you peel back the combination. So we're kind of going to do that here. So let me click on this link and switch over to sharing the correct thing. And there it is. Okay, you should see on screen an example. This is a layer called Global Particulate Matter, PM 2.5, between 1998 and 2016. It has a short 2-sentence description of what it is. It is made by my colleague, or was uploaded by my colleague, Lisa Berry. And this little badge indicates that it is in the Living Atlas. Last updated, it was created August 13th of 2020 and updated about 2 weeks later. It's had almost 100,000 views. And then it goes into a description of what it is. So this is the important part for this section of, I should be doing this in about 10 minutes time. This layer shows particulate matter size 2.5 micrometers. The data is aggregated from NASA CDAC gridded data into country boundaries, administrative 1 boundaries. Those are like states and provinces, and aggregated into 50-kilometer hex bins. And then it goes on to other information. So I really like what the team did with this. We asked some of the typical questions that this data might answer. If you take nothing else from this presentation, if you do this for layers you produce and put out into the web, it really helps people understand, well, what good is this data? What can I do with it? Well, you can answer questions like what are shown on this list. And of course they do citations down here and etc. So all in all, this is a pretty good example of a well-documented layer. And I know what you're all thinking, how can we add this to the map? So I'm going to sign in UO map reviewer. I'm going to spell it right. I'm going to type in the password and hopefully keep me signed in. And if I typed it correctly, we'll be in. Okay, great. We got that far. Are you with me? I hope you're with me. So let me close that. So we're just looking at this. I'll give you a chance to sign in again with the password is in the chat. I had mentioned earlier about ParkServe. I'll buy you a little time here. If you go to Living Atlas and just type in the word ParkServe, I think it was Regina I was recommending this is a good pattern. You can see they have published a layer, and that layer is inside of a web map that's used inside some of their applications. So if I just look at their web map, again, it comes with a description. If I open it, I can see that the map opens to the United States, inferring that it has content for the United States. And let's go to kind of South Chicago, South Shore area and see what we've got. Yep, we have a layer. Okay, and here's the super neat trick for all of you to observe. If you are logged in, you know, when you get your own ArcGIS Online account, when you're logged in, one of the first things you could do is a save as. So although I opened this authoritative web map from the Trust for Public Land, I could do a save as and make it mine. I can name it anything I want. So to kind of establish the pattern, I'll put my name at the end of it. So you all know this is my version. And if you want to try this yourself, just to, you know, verify that you can save a map, go for it. So I'm just adding my name to the end of it and I hit save map. So this is mine now, right? It's their layer. So the layer is still coming from the authoritative source, but now this is mine. It's kind of like checking the library book out, except you never have to return this. Okay, so this is my map. I can do whatever I want. I could say, I want to add a bookmark for Chicago because I'm going to go visit with some leaders in South Chicago. And I want to compare this area to Indianapolis. So I zoom over to Indianapolis and I'll bookmark that as well. Now we can all do that. That's pretty straightforward. Now, you have made changes. Hopefully you've made some bookmarks like I did, or, you know, if it gets too stressful trying to match what I'm doing, don't worry about it. Just watch my screen and just kind of soak it in. Okay, so I've made some changes. If I hit save, this web map will come back to this exact screen extent next time I refresh it. And just to prove my point, I'll refresh it. Browser reopens this web map and it opens to Indianapolis. If I zoom to Chicago and hit save, now it's going to open to Chicago. And we have various applications that Diana will show that can leverage these bookmarks in that user experience. So sometimes it's, if you know you're going to go show this to certain people, a technique we always use is, hey, if I'm going to go visit the mayor of Indianapolis, you bet every map I show is going to show Indianapolis. But if I hear the mayor say, yeah, we're always trying to compete with Chicago on these things, I might also put Chicago in as a bookmark. You don't have to do the bookmarks at all. You know, if I wanted to, what else have we mentioned today? Honolulu. I didn't even spell it correctly and it still found it. So if I hit save at this point, even though I didn't bookmark it, when I refresh, it's going to come back to Honolulu. Or if I put this link in the chat, you all could see it. So right now, this map is mine. It's private. So let's talk about sharing for just a second. This is my map. Nobody else in the world could see it unless they're standing over my shoulder or they are an administrator in ArcGIS Online, then they could see your stuff. So if I want to share this with the public, I just turn on public, or maybe I only want to share it with other people within my organizational account, or in ArcGIS Online, we have things called groups where we can collaborate by putting things in groups that you and I can both see. So I'm going to share it with the public. Okay. And what that allows me to do is then go to the About page. And now I've got this item And see, it's my copy of the item. Oh, this is so nice. They copied over the official summary and description from Trust for Public Lands original. You can see this has only been viewed 3 times by me. And yet, if I want, I can hit share. Oh, sorry, I can hit one of these share buttons for Facebook, Twitter, or this short URL. If I copy that and I paste that into the chat, perhaps if I can find the chat. This is always my challenge with Zoom. Where is the chat? Here, I know, I'll just stop sharing for a second and make my life easier. So I'll paste that into the chat. Any of you can click on that. And because I shared it publicly, you all should be able to open up a map that has my name at the end of the title. So I just want to kind of complete the loop on a real basic fundamental move in our product. How do you share something? How do you create something, make it your own, and share it? Now, let's get back to deconstructing. And to do that, I need to share this screen. Great. So I'm going to close that for now. I'm going to close that for now. Close that for now. And we'll go back to the particulate matter screen. So if you're on this map, it's because you went to, well, actually, I can give you the link to that too. So let's copy and paste that in the chat. Okay. And then what we'll do is, if you're following along, what we'll do is we'll just click Open in Classic, that blue button at the top right corner. And you'll open the map to here. And so I promised you I'm going to deconstruct this thing. And we are definitely going to do that. So to deconstruct it, I'm going to kind of reset this map. I'm going to turn off what attribute we're mapping, which is average PM 2.5 from 1998 to 2016. Okay, great. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to say we are going to map location only. All right, so now the map just shows the borders of the countries in the particular layer I'm using to symbolize this. And in terms of a pop-up, this is its current pop-up. If I go to the layer and hit this little dot, 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 more options it's called. So again, you would mouse over the little dot, dot, dot right here and hit it. And then scroll down here to configure pop-up. That's where you can kind of investigate what's in here. It's got a bunch of text that was typed in, right? And so I'm gonna hit copy on that. And actually what I'll do for our demo is I will remove the pop-up. So now there's nothing happening. I'm tapping on the map and nothing happens. And so that's what I intend. And yeah, the base map is this blue kind of map. I see labels. You see how the labels are kind of semi-transparent because the polygon layer is on top of it. So let's do polygon solid. So this is kind of where, oftentimes this is where we start. We have some data set. Where would I start working with this data? Usually I'll open up the table so I could start looking at the data to say, well, what am I going to map in here? I've got some country information, you know, the country's name and some IDs, and I've got some hotspot patterns. All these attributes are here for you to eyeball and see, okay, this is a pretty rich data set. There's a lot of information in here. And what we noticed over time is the more attributes that are in a data set, the more daunting it can be for someone to figure out, okay, well, which of these do I want? So our thought in building ArcGIS Online to make it easy is to make this button here easy for you to use. This is the change style button. So if you are working in this map, go up here to the change style. Doesn't matter if your map looks like mine right now or not. You know, don't care what your map looks like right now. Just pick the layer that is visible. If you see countries, sorry, let me back up. If you see countries on screen, you'll notice that this layer is visible and these are kind of grayed out. It's because they're not visible right now. If you zoom in, then as those layers become visible, see how this layer now is darkened and the country layer is now grayed out. So I'll go back to this state. We want to pick the country layer. We touch the change style button. And the principle behind ArcGIS Online is an approach we call smart mapping. We want the software to work with you to help you make a good map. So as I recall, we were looking at an attribute called average PM 2.5 from 1998 through 2016. So what are we saying here? We're saying this is looking at what is the average particulate matter over that 19-year period. So if I just touch it, I just choose it, smart mapping looks at that data and it says, well, I see what kind of data it is. It's a numeric attribute. So here are all the map styles you could use. You could size that data, or you could show it by color, right? You could do any of those things if you want. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna choose color, and then we'll go into the options button to see, well, what other options do I have? I have a high to low, I have an above and below option. Might switch to that to tell that story where countries in purple have higher than normal and countries in red have lower than normal particulate matter. And so what I'll observe to you as a policymaker, policy mapper rather, is this is where it helps to know your audience. If the audience sees high concentration of PM 2.5 as a problem, you probably want to choose colors that illustrate that, right? You might not want to choose a color ramp like, let's choose this one temporarily, where green is being used as the color of high pollution. Like something about that just doesn't seem to resonate. There's no hard and fast rules about this. It's more, you know, gut feel, what have you seen before, that kind of thing. So in this case, I might suggest green is not exactly the color I would associate with any level of pollution. I would be more inclined to kind of go to a color somewhere along the brown to blue spectrum. And most of the color ramps, if not all, in ArcGIS Online are colorblind friendly by default. But there are tools like Color Oracle, which you can install on your machine to just do your own check to make sure a given color ramp is colorblind friendly. So in this case, what is happening? Why did the software pick 14 and 1? These are one standard deviation above the mean, which in this case is 7.5, and one standard deviation below the mean. So in other words, anything above one standard deviation is significantly above, like that's a thing, statistically speaking. Of course, it's up to you to decide, well, what story do I want to tell? Maybe you want to drag this handle all the way to the top and drag this one all the way to the, or maybe you want to hit the button and have to start over. That's okay too. Allow me to demonstrate the resiliency of online mapping. Okay, I made a mistake. It's not critical, but I can easily jump back in here and get back to work. So that's what I'm going to do. We were mapping this, and the default setting was something like this. This is where we kind of left off. So the software will always suggest something. And if you have been doing thematic mapping for any amount of time, you've probably anything else where you ask the software to choose a method like natural breaks or equal interval or standard deviation or quantile or manual breaks. And depending on what you choose, the map can look quite different. So just stare at the map for a second. What countries stand out to you? Probably India, Bangladesh, Nepal. And if I choose a different method, now suddenly China and most of Europe lights up. And if I choose yet another method, a different set of countries are going to light up in dark blue, and a bunch of other countries are going to go yellow. The point is, know your method and know your audience, right? So one of the reasons we recommend you not classify data and just go with an unclassed approach is what we talked about earlier, that if you're at a value, if we go to this above and below style, if you're at a value as a country, if you're at 7.4, that's really not different than 7.5. If you're at 13.9 on this chart, that's really not different from 14.0, at which a new classification begins. The advantage of this is there's only two numbers above which, in the case of 14, it's going to be all the same color of purple. And it's up to you to decide, well, where do I, don't hit that button, where do I want to set this upper handle? So this is now a map of extremes where the only the countries with the most extreme values of average PM2.5 get any attention. And we actually have map styles based on that. We have the extremes map style, and we have the centered on map style. So these are all the countries that in red are very close to the 7.5 average. Now, something very important for policy mappers. This is perhaps the difference between a scientific map and a policy map. The WHO recommends that a value of 10 is a significant value when thinking about particulate matter 2.5. Yet my map is centered on a value of 7.5. So if I want to make this map relevant to a conversation with the WHO, or in that context, I just need to drag this up to 10. And it's a little fiddly, so I don't usually do that. I usually just hand type it in. And now I've kind of preserved one standard deviation above and below the mean, but the center point of this map is now anchored at 10. And I'll just hit cancel on what I'm doing to kind of revert back to the original. You can see this is kind of like a cooking show where if I show you each and every step in the preparation of this meal, you know, it's going to be a 4-hour show. So let's just get to the point. You can see what we did here is we chose a map style where the map is anchored on a value of 10. And we even put in the legend right here that this is the WHO guideline. And then at 18 and at 2, those are the values at which you get the maximum color in this color ramp. So now India does stand out, as does Congo, Poland, and etc. And they stand out for valid reasons, as the pop-up shows. Okay, so that's one of the more important moves you can make. Esri software, ArcGIS Online, it will make suggestions based on the data, but what a policy mapper does is they bring their knowledge to the table, or they do the research necessary to find out, well, how much PM2.5 do I need before I start to react or think about a policy implication? And in this case, we chose the WHO guideline of 10 to anchor this map on that value. So now we can say this map is based on WHO guidelines. Okay, that's a lot kind of brain work. Let's talk about just some simple mapping work. Not a fan of this style of map where I see a layer on top of a base map, but I don't know what the country's names are. So go into the base maps and just try on different base maps. Here's something called colored pencil. It's kind of a fun kid looking map. Maybe not appropriate for a subject about air pollution. I might try imagery. Maybe I think imagery would look good under this. You know, that's not bad. You know, I kind of see the ocean has just enough labels to know that it's an ocean, and the land has labels for all of the countries. I might jump into the base map, go to the layer, and I might set the transparency on. I think those labels are a little strong. So here's a pro tip. Just watch what happens as I set the labels to be transparent. And now the labels are there when you want to see them, but they're not so strong they interrupt the pattern of the data. So when they're very strong, I don't know, the map is like shouting, like when you used to type in all caps in chat rooms. Not a great idea. So we want to find a little subtlety in there. Okay, and then lastly on the pop-up, let's see, how do I want to do this? I think I want to show you, I'm going to remove the pop-up, there's nothing there. And I want to show you what not to do. I mean, it's a good place to start, is to enable the pop-up. And on a layer, just make sure that you enable pop-ups somewhere on the layer. And because this one has already been pre-configured, I'll just go in and change it to the default view. So this is the view that when you first add a layer to a web map, it often will look like this, where it's just, we call this the rows and columns pop-up, where it's just an endless list of data, right? It's just, okay, look at all this data. Where is the stuff that's important? So what I'll often do when I'm working directly with a subject matter expert is I will literally put this map on screen and either physically hand them the mouse back in the old days or virtually hand them the mouse over a Zoom or Teams meeting. And I'll just say, hey, Phil, great data set, love the data set. I'm mapping PM 2.5 over the 19-year period. What do I need to tell someone about this? And then I'll hand them the mouse and I'll make them explain to me what is important in this data. It can't all be equally important. I don't say that to them, but I'll generally try to work towards, what do I need to know about this? And as a result, I'll zoom in to show the example of what we do. So now we're looking at the admin 1 level. Once you hand that mouse to someone, or you just make them look at a table of data, just have them explain, well, what's the deal? And I'll even record the conversation if necessary, just so I get the words exactly right. And if they say something in sentences, I'll often try to translate that and type it into this pop-up here. So you'll actually go in to configure pop-up. You'll choose a custom attribute display and you'll hit configure and you'll just start typing. And then you can insert data from the database. And you can also insert expressions. So like, let's take a look at this expression. This is what's called an arcade expression. And what it does is it just kind of defines a variable and it looks at the trend field and says, hey, if the trend field is a -3, I want you to return this sentence. Okay, so instead of showing a pop-up that says trend :-3, how about instead we use our words? I don't know if any of you have kids, but if I've said use your words to my kids once, I've said it 10,000 times. And it's the same with data, except you don't have to have a college fund for data. What this does is allows you as the last person, you're filling the gap between data and policy making. You can translate that raw scientific data into a human readable expression. So like in this case, this is where the expression comes in. Between 1998 and 2016, there was no significant trend in PM 2.5 air quality. Well, that information is in the data in those rows and columns, but we've brought it out. And that's one of the key moves for policy mapping. Okay, I'm going to pause there in case there's any questions, because that was a lot in a little bit. And of course, if you want to, you would hit save as and make this your own version of the map. I'll pause here.
Hey, James, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Could you go over that last bit again? Because I really like the idea of pulling kind of the narrative out based on the data. That just seemed really cool.
I can. Let's go here again. So we have a whole lot of data in here. And I think at this scale, this is what it looks like. And this is usually where people who produce data in layers stop. They say, look, I've labored hard to produce this data. My models, I've analyzed results. My dissemination effort, we've disseminated the data. It's up on our FTP site or it's up on our website. Aren't you happy? Of course we're happy. And I still have an executive. I've got to get this concept into their head in an easy, native way. And the chances that an executive or a member of the public is going to do what I'm doing on screen, scrolling down to find the one field that makes the compelling argument. It's very much, I've got very much a journalist sort of mentality of, I'm not going to wait for you to discover this. I'm going to put it right in front of you, right? And the way we do that is a combination in the pop-up and in the symbology and even in labels of going through. And the pattern I recommend is just open up this pop-up and start writing what the expert says. Just start typing it, knowing that, if they say the typical experience of PM 2.5 here is, and then they tell you what field, you can kind of stub this out. And then when you're ready, go find the exact field that matters. So in this case, I think it was this field here. We were looking at 19. Yeah, sorry, that was a little quick. I'm scrolling through all the fields of the data and I see this population weighted average for the 19-year period. And it happens to have this obtuse field name, not as obtuse as these others. But anyway, we all know how field names are. If you don't, we'll talk about that in a second. But I choose that field name and it gets inserted into the pop-up right away. And I'll just clean this up so that you can have confidence that when you type something similar into your pop-up, that it will work, right? So there's the sentence that my pretend subject matter expert just whispered in my ear. The typical experience at PM 2.5 is 11.2. 11.2 what? Oh, right. Yeah, I would go back in and I would edit this to make it human readable. It's micrograms per cubic meter, right? So this, and you can see this is what happened down below where our team got together. And I think if my memory serves, we started here and then we started talking about, well, we really should have a population weighted version of that since, air quality in the middle of the desert where nobody lives is one thing. It affects the plants and affects the ecosystem, et cetera. But air quality where people live is often a hot topic for people. And that's why we chose to do that. Is that good?
Yes, great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Erica had a question about sharing the web map. So if you start with that web map from Living Atlas or WHO, when you click Save As, is it shared publicly or
okay,
what's the deal?
Yeah, let me walk all the way through it. So I'll do it with global air quality. There we go. So here's this web map. And if you click on its name, it opens up in its own tab. And you can see all the information. You say, yeah, I kind of want to work with this in my own way. That's where you would open it up in a web map. And to the gentleman's point earlier, how can I focus this? Oh, this was built in a new map viewer. So I'll open, actually, yeah, it's a good time to show the new map viewer too. We have two different ways you can author maps in ArcGIS Online now. Our new map viewer has just been, it's been in development for a while, but it's now out of beta and you can use it with confidence in your projects. So let's answer your first question. I would go and if I want to make this my own, I'm going to go over here to the Save button. And in this case, it automatically knows, hey, this isn't yours. So it'll always tag on this word copy. And so we always change that to, something, change the title so that you know what it is. In this case, I'm just going to put my name on the end of it. And it's going to inherit all these tags and it's going to inherit this summary. And now it's mine, but it's private. I've not shared it with anybody yet. So over here, the share button is down here. Let me open this up so you can see the words next to the symbols. So the save button was up here. And then down here, there's something called share. And so if I click that, I can share it with all the members in my organization, or I can share it with the public, or I can share it with groups. So I'll share it with the public. So now this is the Jim Herries version of the map. And there was a question earlier about, could I kind of make this my own? Yeah, you could filter this to say, I only want to show areas, I only want to show the, all the fields are here. You could write any filter you want. We could just maybe do USA. We'll add that expression. And let's see if it did what I wanted. And I could say, okay, I'm assuming CAN is for Canada. And I'm going to say, you have to match one of these expressions, either USA or Canada. And I'm guessing Mexico's MEX. Yep. So now I've filtered this map to be just the North American countries. I would center the map, hit save on the filter. And then I would save the map. There we go.
And then this map shows up in your contents, right? Megan's asking, how long does your version exist? Does it ever expire?
Oh, good question, Megan. It exists until you take it out. So these two items are two things I've created today. If I don't want this one around anymore, here, let's view it by grid so I can kind of see the thumbnails. So if I don't want my trust for public land thing around anymore, I just choose it and I hit delete, and then it'll say, are you sure? Which is nice of it. If there's something you want to make sure does not get deleted, you would go to settings and there's a button called delete protection. And you would turn on delete protection. And now if I say, if I go back to my content and let's view the grid again, just so I know visually which one I'm touching. If I say, hey, I want you to delete this thing, it'll say, no, sorry, can't. If you want to change that, you have to go turn off the delete protection. So that has saved me many, many times. Yeah, so these two items I created today, they'll be up there indefinitely. They don't cost anything to make. They're just my view of those official layers. Any more? Okay, how are we on time? We're getting a little close.
Yeah, is there a way to export to a GeoPDF?
Not in ArcGIS Online. I'm not sure what the options are in Pro. Yeah, I'm not a GeoPDF expert. I know conceptually what it is, but I don't track what our products are currently doing for export to GeoPDF. It's a good question. I'll try to research it in the break.
But we can print to regular PDF. And in fact, I can show a little bit of that here.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. So here's a map called it's called heating fuel. Shows the most predominant type of heating fuel used by state. We zoom in and we'll see the county level that comes on here, and all these different categories. So utility gas is in yellow, electricity in blue, etc. And the strength of predominance is here. So a little bit lighter blue, not as predominant, but super dark blue here in Florida. Definitely electricity is the most predominant type. So say I wanted to print this map to PDF. The option here allows you to print. You can go into the advanced options, do some different scale things. Say I wanted, including the legend. I always recommend doing that. Map only gives you some other options. But that's one way to print to regular PDF. So I know sometimes we love our interactive apps and story maps and dashboards, but sometimes you really just need a print to PDF, and we get that. So now in the new map viewer, it's there with a whole bunch of different options. There's also some charts capabilities if we want to get into that just super quickly. Bar charts, histograms, and scatter plots are pretty cool. So here's a bar chart where we're simply showing the heating type, in this case, utility gas we chose, but we're going to show it by state. And I can go in here and say configure charts. It's set to the sum right now. If I go into this one, oops, This is the one I want to configure. Edit. All right. And it's set to the sum right now of this data set. And if I changed it to count, you'll see something interesting happen. California is no longer the top state. We see Texas is, and we see 254 count. And Florida is also pretty high. Georgia's very high. And if anyone can guess what's going on here, in the chat pretty quickly, but basically what it is saying, well, you're mapping counties and Texas has 254 counties and California has 58 counties. That might be helpful if we're interested in how many jurisdictions we might be dealing with if we're doing a particular policy program or something like that. But in most cases, we're going to be interested in the sum. And now you'll see, yeah, as we expect, California is up there. So that's one kind of bar chart where, yeah, we've got a map of counties, but it can also be helpful to see a different view of the data here broken down by state. I know we're running short on time. So we have a just basic histogram. I'm sure you will have all seen histograms before, but there's ways to set it up where you can put these descriptive statistics right into your chart. And one thing I like to do is on the table view itself, look, I'm sorry, on the attribute table is what I meant to do. The table view of this data, we can even see some statistics there too. So here, let's see some information about this field. We can see these descriptive statistics without doing charts in the first place. If we wanted to, that's cool, but we can also see it here. And what can be really helpful when mapping is to see a number of empty records, the null cells, just straight away, it tells me. And then also, what exactly is utility gas? I don't know. Well, there's a long field description that can come through as well and answer any kind of definitional questions there. It's another way that metadata can show up in the map viewer in ArcGIS Online, so you don't have to go research code books and PDFs and bring that data right to where the map maker is working. One kind of other type of map is this relationship style map that Jim showed earlier about poverty and air quality, just showing two different variables together. Here we've got owners with burdensome housing costs and renters with burdensome housing costs in Atlanta. And the chart can look really interesting with a scatter plot. Let me pull up that legend again. And you can see what a scatter plot looks like when doing these nice relationship maps. It's just one more way to explore your data, to present your data, and get your point across. Figure out, where areas. So these ones here in our map, the red, definitely areas where housing cost is a problem for both owners and renters. So what can be done about it?
So that, Diana, you would say that's an area worth looking at an intervention. And then this style of map also has some additional dimensionality to it about renters. The darker the purple color, the more you would want to do a renter-only intervention. Green, more owner-only focused intervention. And that chart, just the fact that that chart matches the map's colors, I think for those of us who appreciate how maps can bring out the spatial pattern present in the numeric data, it's just such a joy to see those two things side by side. A screenshot of that in a PowerPoint is a very powerful discussion in a presentation.
Definitely, yeah. bookmarks are pretty cool. Jim added those 2 bookmarks of Chicago and Indianapolis. There's no reason why you can't add all kinds of bookmarks that can then travel through into different times that I'm going to be talking to this map with different audiences. I just want to add a new bookmark really quickly, use it into a story map or something like that. It's pretty simple to set up. And then one last thing that I love is this location data situation here. So in Atlanta, geocoding traditionally is I'll give you an address and you give me the XY. And here we can actually click and get an address. If, where can I, oops, here we go. So if I right click, nope. There we go, what's here? It tells me the address right there. And if you do need the XY, all you've got to do is right click. Tons of different conversion options as well, if that's of interest to you. So questions on charts and metadata, that kind of thing?